You hear me say all the time that your experience in life is not the circumstances or the conditions. Your experience isn't what happens to you. It's how you name it. It's how you name it. How do you refer to it? How do you describe it? How do you categorize it? How do you classify it? What interpretation are you giving it? What narration are you giving it? That it becomes your experience. So this idea of a name, it's not just about what we call ourselves. We're forever naming things. Just let that sink in for a moment. We're forever naming things.
Yes. We are here. We welcome you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, and good day to you, wherever you are at this very moment in time. Thank you for tuning in into yourself. Thank you for saying yes to life. Thank you for listening, and thank you for giving yourself permission to be transformed. I am Ade. I am your transformational beingness artist. I just love that. I get to name myself, speaking of names. Well, yes, welcome to a new episode, another episode of Being You. It's the journey back to yourself. It's all about the business of being you. And this is a celebration. It's a celebration, a beginning of a new phase of the podcast. So this is season 2, episode 1. Normally people take a break, but I work for God. Every day is a work day. So what can I say? So yes, and I can't think of a better person to join me. And it's all divine, actually, because I didn't consciously plan it, but it just kind of worked out. It just worked out that my friend, my mentor, my midwife, actually, I should say my midwife, my mentor, my friend, because, woo, Lord, I recently just wrote about the experience when she birthed me. Whoa, that whole thing about, what is that? What did Jesus say about you have to be born again to get to the kingdom of heaven? Oh, you need to read the small print. Everybody want to be born again, but nobody wants to read the small print. It is messy. But hey, I'm still here. So yes, being you, the topic today, the theme today is what is in a name? Have you thought of your name? What does it mean? Did you change your name? Are you happy with your name? Have you had enough of your name and you wish you had another name? Or have you sort of anglicized? Because that would be I think that's a good word. We'll go with that. Like me, I don't say my name the correct way. We'll get into that. But anyway, maybe you feel some kind of way about your name. And did you know that your name plays a major role in how you show up in the world? It has its own vibration. Anyway, what do I know? I'm just a podcast host. So I called my midwife, my mentor, my friend to come and break it. So to break it down, I'm telling you, brace yourself, because Rev D is she's going to drop it like it's hot, because that's what she does. But let me tell you, I'm going to bring her on, but I want to tell you something real quick about her. And some of you have heard you've heard her. Some of my friends are saying, oh, I got to set my time to be there because I love listening to Rev D. And that speaks for itself, because Rev D, I'm going to bring her on while I talk about her. I don't want to talk about her behind her face. I want to talk about her right while she's looking at me, because I can. I'm just big and bold like that. I want to talk about you right to your face. Rev D, Reverend Deborah L. Johnson. she has a way of bringing spiritual truth to us, to me, in a way that you just go, oh, that's what they mean. That when I meditate, I connect with my higher self. Psh, I knew that. She just drops it. And you're like, all this time I've been trying to figure out what it means to meditate. I had a conversation with Rev D last week, and it was around forgiveness and opening your heart. And she gave some advice, like, you just got to keep your heart open and not judging the judgment. Not judging is a lot of work. I mean, every time I'm like, no. Keep your heart open. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, psychics and skeptics, physical beings and non-physical beings, help me welcome my midwife, my mentor, my friend, Rev D. Hey, Rev D.
Hey there. How you doing?
I am good.
Greetings to everyone. Welcome to our show.
Yes, people have been looking forward to you being here. I am happy that you're here. And it's a good time. It's a good time. I love how what is happening, particularly with you and I, in the sense that how it just aligns. You know, we used to have a regular show, and it used to be every first Tuesday of the month. Yeah. And then I was kind of led to kind of step back and reorganize and do some things. And then it turned out that, you know, your schedule worked again. And I think the last time you came that we started this, which was when I got the guidance to start doing my podcasts live, was the first Tuesday of the month. So it's like, how are you doing?
You know, I'm doing fine. You know, needless to say that this whole time period that we've been in since this global pandemic has like upended everything. Mm-hmm. So it feels like a whole new world. And interestingly enough, none of the plans that I thought I would be doing now are happening, but so many of the dreams are. There's a way in which there are openings that are being created now to step in to many of the things that I've said that I've wanted to do and felt like I just got a good kick. It kind of reminds me of this conversation I had years ago when I was still living in Los Angeles, and this woman came to me for spiritual counseling, and she was on my front porch as she was leaving, this thick Southern Texas accent, and she says, I hadn't finished ministerial school yet, so people weren't calling me Reverend at that moment, and she says, Deborah. She says, every now and then, I can feel the hand of God coming up about on the small of my back. And I turn around and say, don't push. She said, I just get to step in a little faster. She said, when you have been pushed by God, you have truly been pushed. So I'm just stepping a little faster these days.
I got to remember that because sometimes I feel like I get pushed out there before I'm dressed. I'm like, wait a minute, I need to put my belt on.
Naked, brother, naked. Got to be out there naked without all the armor.
Woo! Yes. What does it say in the Bible? Naked and unashamed.
Mm-hmm. And you know, just as an aside, mm-hmm. When you said in the opening, it takes a lot of work not to judge. Mm-hmm. If you really think about it, it's the other way around. We're spending most of our time judging. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of work. Judging takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of energy. What you're talking about is the effort that it takes to become aware of all of this effort that we're spending.
Okay, got it. Yes.
That takes 5 ounces of energy to make us recognize the 50 ounces of energy that we've been using doing something else.
I told you. Because I was like, wait, Rev D, it's easy to judge. It just happens without having to think about it. But there it goes. Yes. The minute I become aware of what I'm doing unconsciously, it's like, oh, I got to stop. And sometimes the opportunity just comes back to back. You're like, wait. I'm still working with the first one. So yeah, definitely.
Well, because we learn best in immersion programs. They are more intense. They're deeper. But when you just get thrown in the water, when you get thrown in the foreign land and nobody speaks your language, you pick up the language a lot faster. You ain't never lied. Woo wee. Yes. You know, we wanna tiptoe and make our own curriculum.
Yes.
I want to study this and let me do that, and this will be my homework, and this will be the time I'm off. And it's like,
yeah,
nope, not that kind of party.
And then God puts its hand behind your back. You drop in the water. I can't swim. Oh, yes. You know, Rev D, you've heard me say this. I've said this to my listener. One of the things I love about you is I don't care what we call the show. We can call it A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you're going to drop knowledge. I can say today we're talking about water, and you just start bringing it.
You know, my mentor is Michael Bernard Beckwith. Mm-hmm. So I actually grew up in the LA area with Beckwith, and I love the way that he talks to us as, colleagues. He'll say, every sermon, he says, I'm basically just saying the same thing. Every sermon, I'm saying the same thing. He says, how many ways can we say God is? Just how many ways can we say that?
I so get that. Mm-hmm. I so get that. As you know, I write daily thoughts for Hillside International Truth Center. And so I'm writing for the whole month. And then sometimes, like, by the time I write 4 or 5, I'm like, this is the same thing. I'm just using different analogies to communicate the same message.
Exactly. It's the same thing. Were you the one that was telling me? Somebody, I think it was you. It was a quote from Ricky Byers. That God is the problem solved.
Yes.
Not the problem solver.
Right.
But the problem solved.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk about God, I'm not talking about just some distant deity. We sometimes say that God is omnipresent, everywhere present, omniscient, all-knowing, and omnipotent, all-powerful. But it's really, God is omniscience. God is all knowledge. God is omnipresence. Not just omnipresent, but omnipresent, all presence, all knowledge, all power. And nothing is outside of that. So we tend to think that there's little old us here, and then there's some big deity out there. But that big isness is the only thing there is. In God, we are living and moving and having our being, as it says in Scripture. And this debate about whether God's out there or in here, whatever, it's silly. It doesn't make any difference. It's just like air in the lungs. It's like, yes, there's air in our lungs. Why? Because we're walking around in air. It's like, Yes, God is within. Why? Because we're walking around in God. So is the air in you or outside of you? E, all of the above, because it's everywhere. And we don't have to try to localize it in any one particular place. Mm. And I'm itching to talk about this name thing.
Me too, because I've been doing some research. So let me just acknowledge, speaking of names, I want to, those of you who, maybe one or two of you, probably nobody, but if you forgot, yeah, that's it. If you forgot Rev D's website address, it is Deborah with an H. That's important. Speaking of name, DeborahLJohnson.org. Check out her website. She is truly, as you can tell, you're watching it or you're listening to the show, she's powerful. I just want to acknowledge those of you in the chat room. Linda, Grace is in their house. Nice to see you. She said, I will need to, you're going to jump out of your seat before 11. Okay. Wherever you are, God is, so all is well. Quali's here. Nice to see you, Quali. She sends a love, Rev D. Who else is there? India's here helping me behind the scenes. Gina is in the house. Nice to see you, Gina. April is here. My soulful sister, grateful goddess. And Susie, nice to see you, Susie. You said we've met before. Let's see. But you're sure about that, so I say yes. So Rev D's website address once again is Deborah with an H, LJohnson.org. So Rev D, the conversation, the topic is, what is in a name?
Yes.
What's in a name? And I'll just stop there for a minute. I have some other questions. I don't want to use up my questions because you're going to knock them out anyway. So let me save if I can. What's in a name?
You hear me say all the time that your experience in life is not the circumstances or the conditions. Your experience isn't what happens to you. It's how you name it. It's how you name. How do you refer to it? How do you describe it? How do you categorize it? How do you classify it? What interpretation are you giving it? What narration are you giving it? That it becomes your experience. You can have 4 3-year-olds run through this room right now. And that's just a fact. Is it a disruption? Is it something that makes you giggle and laugh at their joy? Is it something that makes you annoyed and you're trying to figure out like where their parents and how is this, happening? Are you mad at the kids because they're disrespecting you and their space? Do you see their entrance as a reminder that all of us should be playful? See, all of that we then bring to it. It's just a fact that the kids ran in the room and out. Everything else is our interpretation. So this idea of a name, it's not just about what we call ourselves. We're forever naming things. Just let that sink in for a moment. We're forever naming things. And how often, when we're referring to people or to circumstances or conditions, are we not even using their actual name? There's a Midwestern phrase. Somebody called me all out of my name, which basically means you were saying all kind of things about me that weren't my name. Your characterization of me and what you called me was not my name. The most important name for you is not what other people call you. It's what you call yourself. I remember learning years ago, what matters the most is not what they call me. It's what I answer to.
Yes.
Just let that sink in for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what they call you. It's what you answer to.
Mm-hmm.
So in scripture, your name always represented your character. And this is true of many, many indigenous cultures, mm-hmm. where your name represented something about you, something about your character. And a change of name indicated that there was something else that happened to you. At the beginning of the show, when Ade was joking about me midwifing him, and read, that's a great line, read the small print about being born again.
Ooh, wait.
Well, just like with the spring and the seasons,
mm-hmm.
in order to be born again, you have to go through the cycles of life. Mm-hmm. So you got to die to what you have been in order to be born into whatever it is that's next. And those names and those change of names represent something for us. There's a song, I told Jesus that it'd be all right if he changed my name. Woo! When I was first surrendering to ministry, I used to sing that song all the time. This mournful song about how I told Jesus it'd be all right if he changed my name. And it said, but nobody will know you. Your father won't know you, and your mother won't know you, and all these people won't know you if you change your name. It's like, but I told Jesus it'll be all right. It'll be all right. He changed my name. Let that sink in for a moment. What have you been naming yourself? Loser? Late? Overweight? Broke? Uneducated? Stupid? Left behind? Oppressed? What have you been naming yourself? Are you ready for a new name? Are you ready for brilliant, magnificent, child of God, holy, sacred, successful, whole, complete? Are you ready for that to be your name? See, we think of these spiritual qualities as adjectives. We think of them as descriptions, but they're not descriptions. They are the building blocks of who we are. Like Beckwith used to always teach us, what you're looking for, you're looking with. You are it. But you can't see it in yourself because you're not naming yourself that. Just let that sink in for a moment. If you're not naming yourself that, you can't see that. So if you see some kids in the inner city and you're not naming them smart, you can't see them as smart. If you're having trouble with a significant other and you can't see them as caring, you're not calling them that, you're not referring, then you can't see the caring they're giving you. What are you naming things? Not just what is your name, what are you naming things? And are you ready for a new name? Are you ready to give yourself a new name? And whether it's a change of syllables or not, it doesn't matter. The biggest name change for me was when I started naming myself a spiritual being. When that became my primary identity, where I was no longer a human being walking around in the world that life was happening to, things coming at me, some extra part of me that's not material called soul somewhere in there, to a switch of identity of, oh no, I am not a human being walking around in the world. I'm a spiritual being. First and foremost, a spiritual being having a human experience. And that as a spiritual being, I am one and connected with the only thing that is. And because of that, my pure essence is already perfect, whole, and complete. Oh, I'm telling you, that was a revolution. Mm-hmm. And my life has never, ever been the same. Hallelujah for that. What is your primary identity? What is your name? I'm just
saying. Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's a letter in my in the second volume of my Letters from the Infinite series called My Name is Safe in Your Mouth. It's one of those downloads. I get these spirit message downloads. And this letter was actually a spinoff of this email thing I saw years ago, where it was an interview of 4-year-olds, and it was asking them, what is love? And the one that really caught my eye was a little boy named Billy. And this is how he described love. He said, you know they love you by the way they say your name. I know my name is safe in their mouth. I know my name is safe in their mouth. And this letter goes on and asks these questions. This is the voice of the divine speaking to us and saying, is my name safe in your mouth? What do you say about me? Is your own name safe in your mouth? What do you say about you?
That stirred a lot in me. When I read that letter, I love it. But as you personalize it now, because being a Nigerian man, well, my roots, I was born in UK, but when we are named, we have more than 1 or 2 names. Like, let's see. I have about at least 7 names. And there's 3 names in my on my birth certificate. and only one is the one that I use. Mm-hmm. And the other two, I asked my dad, why did he name me that? He's like, I don't know. What you mean you don't know? The other one, I don't mind. But there's the third one that's like, nope, nobody's going to hear that out of my mouth because it's not safe in my mouth. So I'm not saying it. But so let's talk about your name or names. And one thing I've often thought of is the fact that you use your middle name, the initial L. Mm-hmm. And not everybody does that. Mm-hmm. So tell us the meaning of your names and why you, I don't know why I want to say insist, but that's the word that's coming up. Why you use your middle name, well, the initial.
I've met 9 Deborah Johnsons. And most of them have my middle name.
Really?
Like my middle name. In fact, in junior and senior high school, there was another Deborah Lynn Johnson. The only difference was that her middle name ended Lynn with an E. It was like, who's going to know that? Spelled the exact same way. And to make matters worse, she lived on Welland, and I lived on Wellington.
Oh, goodness.
So our records were always getting mixed up in everything. So the L, so the L just helps to make a distinction between all of the other quadrillion Deborah Johnsons that are out there.
Yes.
The L really ain't all that deep. I wish it were. but what I can tell you about my name, which has been very interesting, I've never really related a whole lot to my name. In fact, this is not a joke. If I am not really careful when I write my name, I will misspell it. Darn it. I mean, I have to really, really, really be conscious. It's a biblical name. It's a Hebrew name. But what I do resonate is with the Hebrew name. So Anglicized, as you said before, it's Deborah. Hebrew, it's Devorah. And the energy of Devorah really strikes me at a deep name, at a deep place. It literally means bee, like a bumblebee. It means busy. It's like a bumblebee busy. What it has done for me, though, growing up amongst multiple oppressions, excuse me, is that biblical character Deborah was a prophet. She was a judge. She was a general. She was a bad. She was all that.
You wear your name well.
And some chips. And her general was Barack. Her captain was Barack. She was the general. It just reminded me, growing up in a denomination that still will not ordain women, that, the Bible this and the Bible that, I don't know what Bible you're looking at, because the Deborah in my Bible,
she was running things.
She was running things.
And that's why I'm running things right now. Yes.
But what I would like to speak about, if it's okay, is to flip it about a name in the collective. One of the things I've specialized in my career is cultural diversity. I've been a professional diversity trainer and consultant for many, many years, from small community organizations to, like the big corporations like, NCA, Universal and AT&T. And I mean, like the really big ones. And there's something that's oft misunderstood about this. What's in a name? And we have a tendency to want to reduce things down to being, quote unquote, politically correct. The same principles that work on the personal level, the micro level, work on the macro level, and vice versa. So I've been talking about how on a personal, individual level, that when you're starting to come into your own, when you're starting to see who you are in expanded capacities, you no longer refer to yourself with the same terms that you used to refer to yourself that were limiting,
yes,
that were internalized, oppressive. Something shifts. Well, the same thing happens on a collective level. Mm-hmm. That as marginalized populations start to come into their own, one of the first things that they do is rename themselves. They rename themselves. It is an act of empowerment. The renaming of themselves lets their identity be self-defining as opposed to what has been put on them by the outside society. And typically, that name that they go for goes right up in the face, contrary to whatever the dominant paradigm is from the dominant culture. So you say, for example, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. I was born at the end of the baby boom in the mid-50s. Growing up, if you wanted to start a fight, you just said you Black, and it didn't even matter what was on the other end. Just you Black. Because we had so internalized that as Black being something that was negative.
Yes.
Black was something that was dark and that was evil. And it's like, how dare you call me Black? Mm-hmm. But to take the sting off of that and to come back into the power of it, it's like, oh, yes, I am Black. Mm-hmm. That's what I am. Many people didn't understand at all why those of us who were gay and female chose to be called lesbian and started to insist, and I was at the forefront of that movement, that we referred to it as the gay and lesbian movement. When we were using that term, it was a political term, kind of like Black. It really wasn't about sex in our minds at all. The origin of the word lesbian are inhabitants of a Greek island called Lesbos. Back in the day of Socrates and Aristotle, women were very oppressed. They weren't homophobic. There was a lot of homosexuality, quote unquote, going on amongst the men, but the females were repressed. So in Greek plays, the female part was played by men. Even in Romeo and Juliet, even in those days, that's still being played by males. So any of the artists, anybody who dared to try to be creative got exported, exiled out to this land, this island called Lesbos. It got to a point where women started flocking there. And they developed this thriving cultural community of sculptors and poets and artists. One of the most famous poet there was a woman named Sappho. And we had to ask ourselves the same question. Why is being associated with this island a bad word? Why is that a bad word? Quite frankly, I'm proud. I'm proud to come from a female-oriented where it's okay for us to be our fullness and not have to be male-defined. I'm good with that. Or the later generations who started to claim the word queer, which for my generation is like, why in the world do you want to be queer? But it was for the same reason. It was for the same reason, to go up against, or when the men started using the word gay. Everybody thought they were sick and they were depraved and, satanic. It's like, oh no, I'm gay. I'm happy. That's not what I am at all. When people are changing their names, it signifies something is happening. I will never forget this moment. This was many years ago, but it was so symbolic of what I'm talking about. I was still living in Los Angeles at the time, and there was a talk show host named Tawny Little. She had two guests on her show. It was a husband and a wife, and the husband was president of Little People of America. He was explaining on the show that they were dwarfs and that there were scores and scores of medical categories of dwarfs. And he kept saying emphatically, we are not midgets. Midget is an offensive term, and it is a term that was given to us in the days of exploitation in the circuses when we were freaks. Don't call us midget, it's offensive. And do you know what she did? She looked at him and said, you told me that yesterday when we were like in the sound check rehearsal. And I went and I looked it up in the dictionary, and there was nothing in there about midget being offensive. And when people call you midget, they don't mean like anything. That day, I wanted to just put my hand through the screen and shake her.
Yes.
And say, you are talking to the president of Little People of America. If he said it's offensive, the only thing you can say is, thank you, Mr. Dwarf. That's
it.
Because offense is in the eye of the offended. You can't tell people what's offensive or not. The moral of the story is pay attention. Don't be dismissive. The struggle that groups come through, are we Latinos, are we Hispanic, are we this, are we that? It's important. The nuances of that are trying to get at something. And if you really care, if you love people, and you want their name safe in your mouth, listen to how they're naming themselves.
Rev D, you taking me to a place I'm going to go. I feel it. I have to ask. If I never asked you, I'll be mad at myself. I'll maybe calling myself a different name. Okay, so this thing about how people, the name that people call themselves. And as you were talking about gay and lesbian, you probably know where I'm going with this. So there is a way how white people addressed black people many years ago, the N-word. Young people of today are saying we're reclaiming it, spelling it differently, N-I-G-G-A.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also get white people saying, why can you say nigger and we can't say it? Can you just speak in that?
Yeah. What winds up happening is that there are terms of endearment that cultures will often use with each other, where they are poking fun at each other, and oftentimes are even using the most offensive terms to describe each other. And it's laughing and it's joking and all of the rest of that. And there are typically some boundaries around that, which is that the people within that culture have the liberty to, quote unquote, go there to call each other that, but you don't have that liberty to do that if you are outside of that group, because coming from someone outside of that group, it's usually meant as a put down. The problem that we have here around the quote unquote N-word is that we are exporting it. We're putting it in the cultural vernacular, particularly within the music that we know is going to be sung and repeated. And once you copyright something out there, copyright and like put it out there for public consumption, there's no way that you can control who says it or who doesn't say it. And one of the highest compliments to an artist is to have people singing their songs.
Yes.
Knowing all the lyrics.
Yes.
Singing it along with you.
Mm-hmm.
So it confuses the bejesus out of people when, they're singing along with everybody else. And somebody wants to slap them. They don't get it. Mm-hmm. And all I know is you really can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. If you don't want people calling you that, then don't feed it to them on a silver plate for them to digest it and regurgitate it back to you. I'm just saying.
Yes.
And it doesn't even matter what it is. That's just the way that it is. That the double standards are confusing enough, but something like songs that have catchy hooks and whatnot that are meant to be sung and repeated, that is the highest honor to an artist, and that's what you want everybody doing. Mm-hmm. When you stand out on the stage, you want to just wave the microphone and have everybody sing the song instead of you. Yeah. And you can't have the black people looking at the white person next to them. You better skip that.
Like, I was just having fun, man.
You better sing every other note. And I gotta do this. I gotta do this. And I won't even tell you like all the reasons why. But I also have a spiritual name that was given to me the day after I graduated from ministerial school, which would have been June 3rd, 1996. And And my spiritual name is Emmanuel Zanetta Jordan. I've never used it publicly, and I'm not even going to go into all the rest of that, but I am declaring it now. And Emmanuel means God is with us. Mm-hmm. Emmanuel was the prophetic name of Jesus. Before he was born, he was referred to as Emmanuel. When he was born, we call him Jesus, but his name was Yeshua. Mm-hmm. Yeshua, which would be Joshua, which means the living one saves. So his prophetic name was God is with us. His real name became the living one saves. I was raised in Emmanuel Church of God in Christ. It was one of the motherlode churches. I was raised under Pastor Samuel Crouch of the famous Crouch Gospel family. And he was vice president of the World Pentecostal Movement. We had a separate theater that we bought where we would hold all the conventions and the convocation. The way that I was taught it was God was with us. But it's God is with us in the same way I was talking about before, because we are living and moving and having our being in God. Zanetta means to thine own self be true. Wow. To thine own self be true. And Jordan is about the cleansing, the crossing over, the purifying, the bringing the highest heaven to right here on earth. So it's a really powerful name that I was given. And let me just say this one other thing about names. That in the English Bible, we have reduced all of the names of God to one. From the German root word Gott, which we have turned into God. But in Scripture, there were many names for God. And these different names for God talked about the different characters and the different aspects of God. So that creative God in the beginning that created is the Elohim, which is a combination of the El and Eloah, so that it's a combination of a masculine feminine. It's pure intelligence. And then there's Jehovah, which is a covenant name. It's a relational God. Like when you call your maternal parent mom, it signifies something. It's like, yes, she's got a legal name, but when you call her mom, yes, that connotes a certain relationship that you have with each other. There were a lot of names, Yahweh. There were like all these different names of God. And I think we miss it. That's part of what I like about metaphysics and more of the universal, new thought approach that I have now, is that we describe it in a lot of different ways. Unconditional love, infinite wisdom, pure compassion. That these things, I think, help us open it up. Other traditions will do that. How many statues of the Buddha are there to talk about the different ways in which we can connect and be like the divine? You know, Buddha is not a god, but it shows the different aspects. Or, you know, Hinduism with Vishnu and Shiva, and, you know, like all these different ways of looking at it. And I think that rounds out our experience. And I'm sure that's why the Catholics, for example, pray to a lot of different saints. You know, this one's the saint of compassion. This one's the saint of prosperity. You know, this one's the saint of this or that. They're invoking through that saint's name, yes, the vibratory field of that spiritual quality that they're trying to ignite in themselves to see manifested more in their world.
I feel my brain doing a stretch, like lifting all kind of spiritual weight. And all I have to do is breathe.
Just breathe, my brother.
That's right. You are listening to Being You, the podcast. My guest is Reverend Deborah L. Johnson. Her website address is deborah.ljohnson.org. And you can also catch her every Sunday on broadcasting online through Inner Light Ministries, plural, innerlightministries.org.
And we're streaming now live on Facebook and YouTube as well in this virtual world. And and you can hit me up on Facebook as well.
So we're talking about the vibratory resonance of a name. And there's another part of me of this N-word conversation that's kind of pulling my attention. So let's go to that first. So if you were sitting with a group of young people and they're saying, Rev D, I agree with you what you're saying, but as you said, this is a term of endearment. So when we're in our creative mode, we're channeling what we normally do. How do we still honor our creative expression and not be tempted to beat up a white person because they said the N-word in our song?
Well, I'm not going to try to squash anybody's creative expression. And there's such a thing as responsibility, where you have to assume responsibility for what it is that you put out. Because we live in an exact universe, and what you put out comes back to you. So if there's anything you don't want coming back to you, be it a word, be it a habit or spiritual practice or you know, an object or thing, if you don't want that coming back to you, don't throw it out. Just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean that you should.
Yes.
There was a line in the movie Malcolm X that really struck me. There was a guy that was an elder in prison. He was actually a composite figure that means that they mushed together a lot of different characters and made it into one person. And he said to Malcolm, he says, a man cusses when he doesn't have any words to say. And he gave him the dictionary and said, read it. Read it. So there's a way sometimes we haven't exercised enough creativity in trying to express ourselves. You know, there's a new program I see advertised a lot, software called Grammarly, that like helps you with your writing, kind of like a built-in thesaurus, and it'll give you different words to choose and whatnot. And I invite us to do that, to stretch. I had to do that with emotions. I think so passionately, I confused it for emotion. So if you ask me how I felt about something, I would go on this expose of what I thought. And through therapy, I had to really work on getting in touch with and feeling my emotions. They were so repressed. And I don't know if I've ever said this publicly before, but it's true. I had my first test for bleeding ulcers at 14. At 14. Didn't get any psychological help. I thought it was hereditary, because people always talking about like all these other people in my family that had these ulcers. So I'm getting the test, but nobody's doing anything to help me with how distraught I am. You know, I had my second test at 26. And that's when I decided I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. So I literally wrote out alphabetically emotions, like A emotions, B's, C's, D's, like alphabetically.
Wow.
And I would force myself in those moments to like look through the list and see which ones it was. Okay, I'm feeling disillusioned or discouraged. You know, I'm feeling hopeless or helpless, or, you know, and that really has helped me be the speaker that I am today, and how to connect with people, because I literally took the time to learn that. To learn that. You know, I hope he wouldn't be mad at me, but I'd like to share a conversation that I had with my father that was so incredibly instructive. So my father was born in 1922 in Compton, California. He lived his whole life in Los Angeles, except for when he was in the war. He was military police in Algiers and Paris. And he grew up as a minority. In fact, I had a chance to see not too long ago a photo from his high school yearbook that somebody had where he was in the Negro Club. The Negro Club at the high school. I guess it was the equivalent of their like Black Student Union.
I was thinking about that.
There were 17. I counted them. There were 17. And they were all preppy, you know, with their little ties and, you know, all of that, you know, they used to do back in the 40s, you know, 30s and 40s. And we had this conversation. Now, he got his degree in pharmacy from USC, where he met my mother. And all my family like goes to USC. Third generation. There's fourth generation. So we were all at USC too. So he's referencing this. So this was a conversation he had. This was probably around the 90s, because he didn't really embrace his African roots until closer when he got in his 80s. He says, Oh, hell. You in, folks. You don't know what you want. He said, when I went to the war, I was proud to be a Negro. I wasn't a little colored boy anymore. Then sent y'all to school. And you come back and you tell me I'm a black man. He said, and now just when I get used to being a black man, you tell me I'm a African American. You're like, hell, you don't know what you want. I'm going back to being a Negro. At least then I knew who I was. And it reminded me of this essay by Dr. Howard Thurman called Your Neighbor's Landmarks, where he cautions, think twice before you move your neighbor's landmarks. And it was such an incredible moment. Just this incredible moment. Realizing how much he felt like he was getting lost in all of the shifts and changes. And it just reminded me that we all have to self-locate. When I say be aware, I'm saying be aware. But for your own naming and your own personal identity, you got to find what works for you and nurture that. But just ask yourself, is it life affirming? Does it make you feel closer to the divine? Does it bring you comfort and empowerment? Does it give you a sense of pride? And if you're not saying yes to any of those, you need to come up with something else. People say, well, I don't want to deny my roots. I don't want to deny my heritage. I'm not asking you to do all that. I'm not asking you to do all that. Just what do you keep alive in your soul? What are you answering to? Because I'm going to tell you now, as a diversity trainer, the way oppression works is you get people to oppress themselves.
Yes.
That's the way that it works. You get them to reinforce it so much that they stop believing in their worth. They stop believing in who they are. They kill each other for you. They repress each other for you. You don't even have to worry about them taking over or the goods being distributed because they're so convinced they're not going to have any of it. They're not going to show up for it. Which is why I use the phrase sometimes, we've got to decolonize our minds.
Yes.
Malcolm X says, we've been bamboozled. We've been bamboozled. There's this pivot moment in the Garden of Eden story. We were talking about it before, about this, when you were saying naked, that we just got to show up naked. So the commandment was, you can have anything you want to in this garden, but don't eat off of this specific tree. Not because I'm going to do something to you, but because there is a natural consequence of it. We're not punished for our mistakes, we're punished by them. And this particular tree was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This is not cognitive awareness. It is experiential. It's the same word know that's used for sexual intercourse. And he knew her in a biblical way. That this kind of familiarity procreates itself. And he was saying, you can do anything you want to in this garden, but don't ingest, don't take this in. This fruit of duality, where you're getting your sense of what's right and what's wrong from the experiential outer world, the world of appearances. Don't do that. That tree is standing right next to the tree of life, these two trees. And we are forever before these two trees. Like, don't eat that one. Because if you eat that, you're going to die to being in the garden. It's going to change the way you look at things. So they eat of the fruit. And then they hide. They hide. And in the story, it says that God's looking for them in the garden and calls out. And they say that they're hiding. And he says, why? It says, because we're ashamed. Why? Because we're naked. And there's this beautiful line at that point where it says, the voice of God says, who told you that? Who told you that? And that word told in Hebrew would be similar to what we have in English, which means information came to you from some external source, such that you now have knowledge and information that you could never have arrived of on your own. I was told that. I didn't just figure it out. I wouldn't have known that if somebody hadn't told me that. And when we're berating ourselves and we think we're not good enough, who told you that? Who told you that? Because it couldn't have possibly come from within. And then we collude with it. We collude with it. Where we're telling ourselves that. What are you telling?
Yes.
How are you naming it? And this isn't just people. That circumstance. Are you naming it a mountain? Are you naming it impossible? Are you naming this person against you? Are you naming them the enemy? I remember this moment. It's captured in The Sacred Yes, my first volume, where I went to my mentor Beckwith. Once again, it was back when I was in Los Angeles and I was in a lot of credit card debt. I had quit my job as a real estate investment manager with Prudential, and I was financing myself and my partner at the time. I was financing her through chiropractic school. And I was so worried. And I went to his house. And before he can even let me in, I'm just, Michael. I said, dude, the wolf is at the door. And he just stood there, this little Buddha smile. And he just said, there's no wolf. And there's no door. Boom. Like it. Boom. There's no wolf and there's no door. He wouldn't even let me in.
Because there's no door.
Like that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then he came in and he said, you're going to bring everything all those envelopes you haven't opened, all of it. We're gonna sort it out. You're gonna write everybody a letter, and you're gonna send them $5. $5? They're gonna. And he says, "This is what you're gonna do," and it shifted it. Just honoring those commitments, sending the $5, making arrangements, I was able to rename myself. See? I was able to rename them. There wasn't a wolf. There wasn't a door. I've done this with everything. I got personally, I got $84,000 wiped out by the IRS.
Whoa. I've
had the IRS redeposit money into my checking account that they took that I owed.
You changed your name. Wow.
Even at the church. I took pictures of them because I knew nobody would believe me. Well, we got $22,000 back from the IRS from penalties that technically we owed, but they knew there was nothing willful that caused that situation. Because I won't name them enemy. I won't name them the bad guy. I want that victim, villain, hero thing. Is it? No, you stay off of that. Don't name things as that. And then it won't be your experience. Will stuff happen? Yeah. But just because you've been victimized doesn't mean you're a victim. When I look at the Nobel Peace laureates that I really appreciate, they've been through some stuff.
Hell.
Malala was shot in the face. And she told Oprah, she said, "I don't have time to hate. There's work to be done." Know who you are. Know who you are. And name yourself something that can help remind you of that. The people you're having problems with, rename them in your mind. Rename them. I did my knucklehead son. But the aspiring artist in the house, rename them and watch your experience change.
Well, you renamed my thought about the show. Took it to the next level. And that's one of the reasons I love you. Thank you, Rev D. Thank you so much. I don't even know if I have anything to summarize it because you said it all. You have some event coming up, right? You doing something called Shelter in Faith coming up tomorrow, is it? Is that correct?
I actually did the Shelter in Faith yesterday.
Okay.
However, coming up tomorrow, I am doing a repeat now of a workshop that I did last month online. It's called Spiritual Sustainability. The one that you were in, actually.
Yes.
Where we look at how we name things. We look at storytelling and the role that storytelling has and how it helps to shape our reality. We go over a couple of ancient scriptural parables and see how the wisdom of those stories is so applicable to our lives today within the context of very current events. So we're able to tap into something that's transcendent. It goes on for 2 Wednesdays. It's March the 6th and March the 13th, 2020. It's from 10 to 11:30 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. To register for that, it's very easy. You just go to paypal.me/Rev Deborah L. Johnson. Just my name. PayPal.me/Rev Deborah L. Johnson. And if you check out my Facebook pages or anything, those links will be there for you. We'll send you the materials. It's going to be via Zoom. We'll send you the link. We will record it. So you'll get the recording as well. And if for some reason you're not able to participate live and you still want to register for the class, you can do so and you'll get all the materials afterwards.
Yeah, and I was in that class and you think this is deep. It's the next level. Like lowriders, you just go even deeper. Like, I've never seen life through this perspective. I've been afraid to come this deep. But Rev D is like, no, it's all part of the process.
All part of the process, my brother.
Someone just said you said March. So that's not March. That's May.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I got my M's mixed up. Yes, it's May.
Yes.
Sorry. Tomorrow, May 6th, May 13th, 2020, 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Thank you for that correction. Woo.
I know, right? People start registering for next year. It's like, wow, she promoted quite early. We probably need it then. No, you need it now.
I'll have some good stuff for you by then. Because I'm like a lot of people, I'm reformatting a lot of my things to be able to be taken virtually. And I have a lot of material.
Yes, you do. The sacred yes. This is not worn. Well, it is worn. It just lets you know how much I use it. And you would have to pry this off my hands. And this one too, I'm like, I got to start sticking it together. Your deepest intent. This is volume 2. And this is volume 1. If you really want to, oh no, wait a minute. Look, I'm trying to do this. The sacred, you know what? Okay, here we go. Yeah. If you really want to integrate and embody spiritual truth, get one of these. Get both, but at least get one of them. And man, some of those words and letters will jump at you and like, wait a minute, is God in my head in the same room with me? And you keep reading, you be like, yep.
Yeah,
yes,
definitely.
Yes. Indeed.
Definitely read it out loud. And the publisher chose that cover. So it's like script. It's like scripture. And they highlighted one phrase there. I am with you always. That's that Emmanuel. God is with us.
Yes.
And the spirit voice saying, I am with you always. And I was so pleased that they chose that to be the phrase.
So they just chose it out of the blue, huh? You didn't even ask them to do that. Wow.
Divine. It's all, we all connect somehow. And that's my dream for those works, is that you listen to what I'm listening to. Speak them out loud, because they literally are conversations that I transcribe. So it comes verbally first. So you say it out loud, you get the resonance. And you'll get signs. Just pay attention. Spirit speaks to us in everything, the birds, the clouds, a sign. I remember passing and it said, help wanted, inquire within. And I knew it was my message. It was on outside of a restaurant. The divine will connect with you. And you'll know.
It's waiting. It's waiting. I'm right here. India said, I am literally about to go to work renaming myself.
Good.
April said, great show. Thank you. Arts of Empowerment said, beautiful you. Arts of Empowerment earlier and requested you do one of your raps, but we kind of, I don't know if you want to, but time is kind of moved along. Susie, she's giving you props as well. She said, thank you very much. And Haley said, that was beautiful. Thank you. And what else? Yeah, they're giving props in the chat room. Anything else you want to add before you leave?
Thank you. No, I would just say to everybody, just remember how you speak of yourself, how you speak of other people. If you want the best out of the relationship, and that includes your relationship with your own self, speak of yourself highly.
And that includes how we're naming the current season we're going through right now.
It's everything.
It's everything. Yes.
It's everything. That was like in Genesis in the Bible, before the Garden of Eden story, there was that we were given the power to name things. It was symbolized in naming the animals, but to name things and have it be so for you. It is done unto you as you believe, as you name it. That becomes your experience.
Yes. Rev D, I'm holding. No. Okay, so Susie was saying the link has an issue, but I have it here. It's working. Susie, try it again. And it is paypal.me, not .com, .me /Rev, R-E-V, Deborah with an H, L Johnson. PayPal.me. It works on my end.
Yeah.
Again,
thank you.
Thanks, Rev D. Love you.
As always.
And you'll be back next month.
Okay.
All right. Love and blessings.
Take care, my brother.
Peace. Oh, my goodness. Life is good. New Jay said, powerful as always. Ladies and gentlemen, my mind is empty. Yeah, I don't even know how to summarize the show. It's been said. Thank you all for being here. I love and appreciate you. I'll be back next week. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to tell you, but my mind is literally empty. So that means there ain't nothing to say. I love you. I bless you. I appreciate you. And I thank God for you. Whatever you do, call it good. Because you can. Peace and blessings.